Imagine waking up one day and realizing that you are born on a completely different planet, and everything you learned was lie, and the heroes you worship were actually monstrous villains.
On Monday night, I went to a special screening of Beyond Utopia, which is a documentary about Pastor Kim Sung-yoon, who is the director of the Caleb Mission. The Caleb Mission helps North Koreans defect and flee from North Korea. Despite being a man of God, Kim's operation, an underground railroad of sorts, depends on the criminal underworld to traffic these people to freedom, and like some Indiana Jones-like figure, Kim is trudging through the jungles of Vietnam and Laos, getting these people out of the communist Southeast Asian bloc. His mission depends on the donations of others, so he can bribe these criminals to help traffic people to freedom. Now, in this documentary, you see Kim working with spies inside police organizations. He himself is a wanted man in many Asian countries with loyalty to China. And it sounds like fiction, like something out of Mission Impossible. But this is just the day-to-day life for Pastor Kim. So much of this you get to actually see. And nothing in this documentary is recreated. It's remarkable. Despite all the political intrigue, Pastor Kim's life was deeply impacted by the tragedy of the death of his young son. After this traumatic event, he and his wife is a North Korean defector as well, pledged their life to service.
사실 우리 아이가 상당히 몸이 안 좋았는데 탈북자로 구출하다 죽었잖아. 그러다 보니까
오늘 좀 봐주십시오.
여보세요?
목사님이십니까?
예.
그 상백에서 지금 사람이 가끔씩 나왔는데요.
제 죽었을 때 화장하면서 우리 부부가 이야기했던 거거든요. 그러니까 우리 먼저 보낸 우리 아들 생명만큼 더 많은 탈북자를 우리가 구하겠다. 이게 우리 아들 지난 10년 동안 구출한 사람이 기독교 용어로 그 아이를 미랄 삼으신 거죠.
Now, I respect your time, so just go see the documentary if you get the chance. It will likely win the Oscar for Best Documentary next March. It won't disappoint you whatsoever, and frankly, dethroned Grizzly Man in my book for my favorite documentary of all time. Now, I hope it gets a much wider release because everyone needs to see Beyond Utopia. For those that want to learn more, stick around. I went into this documentary with what I thought was a fairly sound understanding of the Korean War and the reality of life in North Korea. Michael Malice is one of my favorite political commentators, and he has traveled there and even wrote a book about North Korea. One thing the news does really well is that it kind of keeps us focused on certain problems going on in the world, and then one day there's a new problem and we just move on and kind of forget about the past one. And I think the problems in North Korea kind of highlight that. I think it's fair to say that a lot of people forget about the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, more commonly known to us as North Korea, with its population of 26 million people, a country that continually has had one of the worst human rights records for decades straight. But by the time the credits rolled, I felt really ashamed of myself. You know, I've laughed at Kim Jong-un being Rocket Man, and the Yeonmi Park memes are outrageous and kind of funny. But when I really was forced to confront my thoughts, in many ways, North Korea has been a little bit of a joke to me. It's some backwater dystopia ruled by a very unfortunate-looking family that we really don't do anything about because they have nukes. There's even a bit of me that thought, well, if it's that bad, why don't they rise up and take over the country? But the reality of the situation is much darker, scarier, and really kind of makes us look at problems we're encountering in America. You see, no one leaves North Korea because they're upset with the government. They leave North Korea because they have no other option. They are either starving or so ostracized that they will die if they don't leave. Beyond Utopia shows interviews with various defectors where they talk about the level of brainwashing they had been raised with. Even one of the families featured in the doc, the Rose, who were literally on a kill list in North Korea, had plenty of nice things to say about Kim Jong-un. Grandma Rowe makes excuses for him. He's so young with so much on his shoulders. He's doing his best. Now, I certainly complain about my own government all the time, but I'm not jailed, re-educated, or murdered for my dissent. Her granddaughters talk about how Kim Jong-un is the greatest man in the world. I actually have the ability to imagine criticisms of my own government. And as you watch the doc, you see that the North Korean people are incapable of doing that until they're truly free.
그래서 자유는 얼마나 소중하다는 거, 공산주의는 절대로 안 된다는 거. 자유는 내가 지킬 때 그게 자유지. 이 대만도 중국한테 빼앗긴 자유는 자유가 아니다. 자유는 우리가 지켜야 그게 자유인 거고, 자유가 없는 곳엔 인권도 결국은 없다.
See, and that's the selling point of this documentary to me. You know, it reminds me of Plato's cave. If the only thing you know is shadows on the wall, how can you even begin to imagine other ways of thinking? I just felt such a rush of conflicting emotions, seeing how brainwashed the North Korean people were. You know, you have this great sympathy for them and their just tenacity and strength. You feel this well of hatred for the government that's putting them through all this terrible stuff. And then the embarrassment of not being able to do anything about it. And then the immense gratitude that you live in a culture that has freedom. When the lights came up in the theater, I just was almost just so emotionally overwhelmed that I just didn't even know what my reaction really was. And it was just important to be kind of put through all of that to really force to think about your reality and theirs. Now, director Madeline Gavin's research pays off in many short vignettes peppered throughout the doc on North Korean culture and history. You get to learn about the mass games, the famine in 1994 through 98, and even a brief foray into Junchae, which is North Korea's unique communist ideology that combines a religious personality great man cult with their nationalist rhetoric, and of course, Marx's historical materialism. Now, these just really flesh out some much needed context clues without taking too much time away from the defectors. Now, I don't want to spoil too much about this movie and the actual ending because it's an awesome roller coaster ride. The themes in this documentary are all very topical right now. The only complaint I had was a brief 1-minute section where the subtitles blended in with a white background. And to be frank, that's probably a Regal Cinemas issue and not even has anything to do with the Beyond Utopia team. Just something I noticed. Now, Beyond Utopia premiered at Sundance this year and has been racking up awards ever since. You may be hearing about it for the first time from me, but I assure you there's plenty more to come. I really hope Madeline Gavin and Pastor Kim continue their collaboration. I would love to follow a North Korean defector going through resettlement in South Korea and see what that process is like. And then also to cover more on Pastor Kim and Caleb's mission. I just think this is a really interesting just story. And it's a story that I really don't want to see end anytime soon. I think what they do is vastly important. So go out and see Beyond Utopia. 5 out of 5, A+, gold star. It's going to win an Oscar. I mean, what more do I need to say? Have a great day, y'all.